Why do we feel it's necessary to yak about bullshit in order to be comfortable?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Welcome back, everyone. It's I, your reluctant gringo, back from south of the border, back at south of the border. And today we've got a lot. There's a lot in the news, and if you didn't know, you should know that we're on the brink of war, apparently. Well, it really depends on who you talk to or where you listen to. And really, should we be at the brink of war? Should we be at this point in our history? And there's a lot of questions. There's some sort of disagreement amongst Republicans. You know, you have the MAGA Republicans on one side who said, no more war, no more foreign wars, no more blood and treasure. On the other side, you've got a president who made all those promises about no more war, but now he's faced with the reality of a world situation in which he might not have any other choice to make. Now, everybody's going to have their opinion on this and whether or not the United States should commit any type of resources beyond what they've already committed. Now, we're there. We've already admitted that we're there. We're sharing intelligence with Israel as they strike Iran and as Iran strikes back, and it's just back and forth. And right now, as we speak, there are a lot of people dying. And there's a lot of buildings being destroyed. There's a lot of lives being upturned in this area of the world. Again, it just seems like I've been alive for half a century, and it seems like all I've ever heard about when it comes to the Middle East is war. I'm pretty sick of war. I'm pretty sick of the deserts. I'm pretty sick of the sandbox. I'm pretty sick of sending American soldiers over there for I don't know what reason besides oil. Again, I get it. Israel's our ally. I get that. But then again, at some point in time, you just got to say to yourself, is it really worth it at this point? Because it seems like everybody over there just wants to fight. But we're going to get into it, and we're going to hear from the man himself first and foremost before we get into some of the legalities. We're going to look at what Congress is preparing to do, which is pass a resolution in conjunction with the War Powers Act to limit the power of the president to do anything. And is that constitutional or not? And we're going to look at Articles 1 and Article 2 of the Constitution to see exactly what it says and really, decide, does the president have the ability just to go it alone? I don't think he does, but then again, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm just a constitutional academic. And we're also going to look at the IAEA report. Now, the International Atomic Energy Agency is the watchdog group that is part of the United Nations that basically has been inspecting Iran, and they came out this report in late May. It's a pretty damning report, but there's a lot being said in the media that's being contributed to this report that isn't in the report, right? And we're gonna go through that, and I'll show you the actual report and the other statement by the IAEA that they put out. Their board of governors, 35 governors from around the world, from different countries, who said, please don't bomb the nuclear sites because it could be really bad. It really bad isn't for the environment, really bad isn't for one of them could accidentally go off if there is one built there, or it could cause an explosion of massive proportions. Now, maybe we care, maybe we don't care. It's the mountains of Iran. Hey, if you want to turn it into glass, turn it into glass. I get it. Okay. But again, first things first, folks. First things first. I always like to hear from the man himself. So let's get this up here. Here we go. All right. Let me put up the volume a little bit. Boom, for my own headphones. And hopefully that's not too loud. Now he's on Air Force One, so it's going to be a little loud and might be difficult to hear at times, but we'll see what we can see. Or hear what we can hear.
How's it going? It's going well. Did everybody have a good time? How about you? I did. I always have a good time.
I always have a good time.
Right before we took off that you're not leaving because of a ceasefire. Why are you? Can you elaborate?
We're looking at better than ceasefire. We're not looking for a ceasefire. I didn't say I was looking for a ceasefire. That was Emmanuel. Nice guy. But he doesn't get it.
All right, what he's referring to is that Emmanuel Macron, now this is Trump leaving the G7, talking to reporters. Now, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, basically put out a statement that said President Trump is looking for a ceasefire. That kind of pissed off President Trump because basically he had to come out and say, hey, I'm not looking for a ceasefire. I'm looking for an end. There's a big difference between those two things. So, as he says, I like Emmanuel, but he got it wrong.
Right too often. But We're looking for better than a ceasefire.
That doesn't mean you're looking to get into this more. You're not going to involve the U.S. in this conflict at this stage. You're going to do anything more for Israel right now?
We're doing pretty well. Right now, we're doing pretty well. Remember, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. We don't have to go too deep into it. They just can't have a nuclear weapon.
What was the thinking on the call for Tehran to evacuate? Is there a threat or is there incoming? What was the thinking on the full evacuation?
I want people to be safe. And that's always possible. A thing like that could happen. I just want people to be safe.
Is there any new concern about U.S. troops or assets in the region at all today?
We have great people. They know how to protect themselves.
And when you say better, what specifically do you
Down
mean?
so hard if they do anything to our people. We'll come down so hard, then the gloves are off so beautifully. Now, I think they know not to touch our troops.
Are you sending the vice?
But our troops are ready.
When you
Do
say
you
better,
plan to send the vice president and Steve Witkoff? There's reports that you want to send the vice president and Steve Witkoff to meet with the Iranians and have discussions. Is that something you're considering?
Not sure yet. I may. Depends on what happens when I get back.
what specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here?
A real end, not a ceasefire. An end.
So something that will be permanent.
Yeah. Or giving up entirely. That's okay too.
Are you close there? Is that possible in the next 24, 48 hours?
It's certainly possible.
Now, President Trump has already posted on Truth Social he wants an unconditional surrender from Iran. He's already threatened the supreme leader or the Ayatollah or so-called supreme leader. And so basically says, we know where you are. You're safe right now until we decide to let Israel bomb you, basically, and take you out. So he's in a position to dictate. Now, he gave them 60 days. They didn't want to do any type of deal. They were kind of stringing him along. Iran was stringing along the United States while developing their weapons. I mean, 60 days, I mean, they had a deal. And they said nothing. They said they didn't do it. So as of right now, there are bombs raining down in Israel. There are bombs raining down in Iran. And we'll see, go from there.
Complete give up. That's possible, yeah.
Has the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense drawn up plans for you if Iran were to attack U.S. bases or do any damage to U.S. bases?
You can't say that. What a dumb question.
There's been some skepticism. Is there any guarantee that if the U.S. did get involved militarily, that a U.S. bomb could destroy Iran's nuclear program and facilities?
Everything or anything or life, you know that. Look at you, right? There's no guarantee. But you're saying a guarantee on what?
Do you think if the U.S. got involved militarily, it would actually wipe out Iran's nuclear program? Or where's your assessment of that?
I hope their program's going to be wiped out long before that. But they're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
Do you have any reason to believe the Israelis are going to slow down, or are they going to hit the accelerator right now because they've got superiority?
Yeah, over the next 2 days, right? You're going to find out.
Has the gang of eight...
Nobody's...
By the way, the Israeli government has come out and basically said within the next 24 hours, we're going to do things that are going to make other things that we've done look like child's play. So I can't wait to see what they have in store. Now, when they talk about a U.S. bomb, right, when they talk about the U.S. being involved, the reason is because the United States pretty much has the only what they call a bunker buster missile, which basically it's this very heavy bomb that they drop from a B-2 from a stealth. It burrows about 200 to 300 feet into the ground and then explodes. And then what they'd have to do, because these nuclear facilities might be 600-700 feet under the ground, is they drop one, they make a hole, then they drop another, they make a bigger hole, they drop another. So they might have to drop 3 or 4 of these things. To do that, to get the B-2s over there, it's a process. I mean, they have to refuel multiple times. We don't have B-2s sitting at a base anywhere in the Middle East right now. So, but that's what they're asking. And then the other stupid question, do you have plans in case Iran hits? Yes, there are plans. Before he became president, there were plans. They might have revised them, but there are plans. And it would be a really dumb thing for Iran to attack any type of United States military installation or troops or vehicle or whatever, because it's President Trump. He'll just drop a Moab, which is the mother of all bombs, which is the biggest non-nuclear weapon that the United States or any government really has.
Slowed up so far.
Has the gang of eight been notified about what's coming in the next couple days?
We'll be talking to them.
What can you do?
All right, that's very important that little question, that little flippant answer is very important. Has the Gang of Eight, which are a group of the highest-ranking congressmen and House of Representatives and senators from the legislature, they need to be the process. We're going to go over the War Powers Act later. He's supposed to, as president, as commander in chief, tell them before he does something. Okay, that's how it's supposed to work right now with the War Powers Act of 1973. We're going to go all over that in a minute. The fact that he's like, we'll think about it. We'll get to it. And, if he doesn't do that, he's placing himself in a constitutional position where he might get himself into trouble. Maybe not with Republicans, but definitely with Democrats. He's giving them ammunition. Again, we're going to go all over the War Powers Act and what that is, and how it pertains to the Constitution and his role as commander in chief.
It's not necessary.
What can you do in Washington?
It's not necessary.
In Canada.
Just be a little bit, I think, more well-versed. Not having to use telephones so much, because I don't believe in telephones. Because people like you listen to them, you know. So being on the scene is much better. And we did everything I had to do in the G7. We had a good G7. We signed the deal with the European Union, phase one of a deal, but we signed the deal with the UK. And the UK is really great. We're very far down the line with a lot of deals. I mean, look, we're actually finished with every deal if you really think about it, because all I have to do is say, this is what you're going to pay. But it's nice to be nice.
Did Secretary Bessent stay behind as your representative? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, a couple of people.
Can I ask you where?
Here we go. Who else has a question other than CNN?
Mr. President, you talked about the European Union. Can you tell us what the status is on talks on those you signed with the UK today?
I don't feel that they're offering a fair deal yet. You know, they've been very tough over the years. If you look at European Union, they formed in order to hurt the United States on trade. And we're either going to make a good deal or they'll just pay whatever we say they have to pay.
What about the Japanese? So you met briefly with Prime Minister Shiba?
Conversation.
So talking about all the deals that he's trying to make economically as he's leaving the G7 early to be in the Situation Room.
He was a great man, but I think he's going to do a very good job.
You think you have a chance of a deal there?
Chance. They're tough. Japanese are tough. But ultimately, you have to understand, we're just going to send a letter and say, this is what you're going to pay. Otherwise, you don't have to do business with us. But there's a chance of a deal.
They want changes to the auto tariffs as well. Is that on the
See
table?
what happens. Anything else?
Yeah, this drone attack in Kyiv. What's your response to that? It looks like 14 or so, a Russian drone attack in Kyiv. Very recently. It seems 14 civilians at apartment building.
Walking back to see you. Sounds like it. I'll have to look at it.
Joint statement on the Middle East. What changed about that convinced you to sign on to it? The G7 joint statement.
Well, I haven't seen the statement yet, but I authorized them to say certain things. I don't know whether or not they said them correctly, but I think they probably did. We had a good meeting. I think that Canadian representatives were very good. He did a very good job.
How are the trade? How was your meeting with him? How are the trade talks looking with the Canadians?
I think we had a lot of good talks with a lot of people.
You said he's looking for something more complex. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
They get too complex on the deals and they never get done. And we need speed. You know, we're dealing with, really, if you think about it, probably 175 countries. And most of them are going to just be sent a letter saying, it'll be an honor to trade with you, and here's what you're going to have to pay to do it. We're making a lot of money. You know, we took in $88 billion in tariffs. And I was called by Congress about 2 nights ago saying, we don't understand, the numbers are so far off. And I said, is that good or bad? He says, well, we're taking in so much more income than we thought. We've never seen anything like this. What is it? I said, check the tariff column. And it's about $88 billion.
It's a lot of money.
They've never seen before. And that's nothing compared to what it's going to be.
You've got other tariffs coming down the pipe here. What's the timing on those? Things like lumber, copper, pharmaceutical drugs.
Yeah, we're going to be doing pharmaceuticals very soon. That's going to bring all the companies back into America.
All of them, or focusing on research tax?
Back in, at least partially back in. You know,
And that'll be a good thing for people in the United States. I've done a video here living in Mexico and how cheap the drugs are here. They're really cheap. I mean, for what I would pay in the United States for medicine versus what I pay here, it's literally pennies to dollars. Literally pennies to dollars. I have no idea why the United States is charged so much. It doesn't make sense to me.
They left us because we had presidents that didn't know what the hell they were doing. We should have never lost our car business. We lost 52% of our car business over the years. Should have never lost it. All they had to do is say, if you make a car, you're going to leave us, you're going to make a car, you're going to pay a 25-30% tariff, and they would have never left. Nobody said that to anybody until I came along.
Homeland Security is saying that ICE is going to start enforcing in hotels and farms again. Is that a change of course from last week?
We're going to look everywhere, but I think the biggest problem is the inner cities. We're looking everywhere. Look what they let into this country, what Biden let in or allowed.
The ICE raid's continuing.
What the hell he was doing, frankly, but whoever worked for him. But they let into this country. We're never going to forget it. They let prisoners in. They let.
Although it will be interesting to see what happens when farmers don't have migrant laborers to work.
No, we're going to get them out.
I don't know how we're going to. I don't know how the farms are going to do.
More in the inner cities.
That does worry me.
Democrat-run cities, sadly. I mean, I'm just giving you. There's far more in there than you have on a farm or someplace.
So no one's getting exemptions anymore. Everyone is
being looked at, but the bigger problem is the cities right now. That's where you are, and that tends to be where the really bad ones are. The murderers. You know, they've let in 11.
There's an interesting piece in Vox talking about how Trump is not as successful deporting people as Obama was during the same time span, and how many more thousands Obama was able to deport. They actually called Obama the deporter in chief. And the article goes through it, and basically it's because the cities were not sanctuary cities. That really didn't exist. And so there were no laws. So the local law enforcement and the state law enforcement agencies actually worked hand in hand with ICE. It was really easy. They didn't, they had someone in detention or in a county jail, and they said, oh, ICE wants you. Let's call them up. Nowadays, it's, oh, ICE wants you. Let's hide you. So it's really interesting. When Obama was president, none of these states, none of these cities were so adamantly against contacting or working with ICE. With Obama, he literally deported thousands upon thousands upon thousands every month, to the point where, like I said, migrants themselves, immigrants, started giving him the nickname, the deporter in chief. And imagine if, with the effort that Trump is doing right now, if you're on that side of the fence for the issue, if there was no such thing as sanctuary cities or sanctuary states, and that the local law enforcement and state law enforcement is working hand in hand with ICE now, the numbers would probably be pretty incredible, because he's beefed up those agencies so much and put such a focus on them. But anyways.
11,888 murderers, people that killed people. Biden allowed that to happen. So the Democrats allowed it to happen. Biden didn't know he was even around.
On your Senate
just leave Biden alone. He doesn't know where he's at. He's got cancer now. Just leave him alone.
Sub-cabinet members at the Defense Department. Your undersecretary.
Nominations go faster. The Democrats hold up our nominations.
Are you going to talk to Senator Thune about that?
John Thune's doing a very good job. I've got a lot of people in, but he's doing a very good job. The Democrats, if we had George Washington up for approval, the Democrats would take maximum time, every hour, every minute, to delay him as long as possible. If we had a combination of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, they would go max. It's called max time.
So you've always said that you don't believe Iran should be able to have a nuclear weapon, but how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having one.
I got one on. You were at this beautiful.
I think Tulsi's in the doghouse lately. By the way,
you said a lot about acquiring Canada as a state. Did anybody talk to you about that? And where are you now?
Much better deal from Canada, but it's up to them. They're going to have to pay a lot of tariffs and things. They're going to have to pay a lot of money for the dome, for the Iron Dome. They want to be a part of it. We may make a separate deal on that, by the way. We discussed that, yeah, on the dome. That may be a separate deal. They want to be at 71 billion. They're going to pay.
It could be a dome thing separate from the tariff.
They'll be in the dome. Yeah, they'll be under the dome.
Canada will be under the dome.
Negotiating with the Iranians right now, or do you want to wait?
I've been negotiating. I told them to do the deal. They should have done the deal. Their cities have been blown to pieces. They've lost a lot of people. They should have done the deal. I told them do the deal. So I don't know. I'm not too much in the mood to negotiate.
Oh,
Do you think you'll be in the
that's not
situation
good.
room tomorrow at any point?
Tomorrow morning, girl, while you're sleeping. Goodbye, everybody.
Evacuate Tehran. You know, you posted evacuate.
I think it's safer.
On
A
Minnesota,
lot of bad things happening there. No, I think it's safer for them to evacuate.
on Minnesota, there were a lot of horrific details that came out today about the suspect who's been charged there. Have you called the governor yet, or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't really call him. He appointed this guy to a position. I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him, say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess.
Talking about Tim Walz,
So,
of course.
I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
On the big, beautiful bill, sir, can you talk about what the Senate?
Well, with a big,
I've been looking at the Senate. They
great,
proposed some
big,
change.
beautiful bill,
Are
right?
you okay with their changes?
I hear so far it's going well.
Are you going to extend
Well, look, if it doesn't get approved, 68% tax increase, and I think the Democrats would have to, they'd be, because we won't get Democrat support. Think of it. We're giving the biggest tax cut in history. Instead, you have the biggest tax increase in history. 68%.
Are you going to extend the TikTok deadline again? It's coming up in June.
Probably have to get China approval. I think we'll get
Do
it.
you have the legal basis
I
to
think
do that?
President Xi will ultimately approve it.
And you have the legal basis to do that, to keep extending it?
But we do.
Forgot about TikTok. That's still all up in the air, isn't
Any
it?
sign that North Korea is getting more involved in helping Iran, or is Russia getting more involved with
I
military
haven't seen it.
assistance?
No.
What
I don't
about-
think anybody wants to get involved. It's a mess.
What about
No one is
American
involved.
citizens
Iran's on its
who are
own
trying
right
to
now.
leave the area with the airport shut down, Ben Gurion shut
We're doing
down?
the best we can with it. We're working on that. We're doing the best we can. Thank you, everybody, very much. Have a good
So that was the president, definitely. So talking about, he did put a lot of Truth Social posts out. One of them was to everybody who lived in Tehran, capital city of Iran, to evacuate immediately. And he did that because he wants innocent civilians not to die. I mean, he knows what's going to happen. He knows how things are going to go down. He knows that there are military targets within Tehran that Israel is going to strike. So he just wants to see people evacuate as much as possible. Now, another thing that happened is Israel hacked into the banking system of Iran and made it almost impossible for any of the IRGC or high-ranking, basically the bank that's dedicated to the Iranian government and the military and especially the higher-ups. I don't know how they know this. Mossad is a great intelligence organization, so they must have known. But they hacked into the bank, so they can't get their own money. So basically, their liquid assets are basically frozen. So good luck. But I did see a short video earlier today on the news of the highway leading out of Tehran, and it was jam-packed on both sides of just civilians just trying to get the hell out of there because they know what's coming. More than what we've seen. Now, of course, there's ballistic missiles still being fired from Iran into Israel. I've seen the video of the F-14s. Basically, Iran's Air Force is done. It's gone. But it's interesting. They're showing, look at these F-14s Iran has. Blowing them up while they're still sitting on the tarmac. And I'm like, those F-14s are from the United States. We gave them to them. We gave them to Iran before the 79 revolution, before the Ayatollah came in, before the whole religious revolution back when we were still supporting the Shah of Iran back in the late 70s. So, I mean, we're just basically blowing up stuff that we gave them almost 50 years ago, which F-14s, they were a nice plane back in the day, but today flying against some of the things that we have, it'd be like watching a Ferrari, battle out a Volkswagen Bug. It just wouldn't be any contest. So, I don't think really, I mean, they are what they are at this point. So, but yeah, that's the president in his gaggle. I love that we have so much access to the president and that they put it on the website all the time. I love that he's going to answer. You may not like his answers. You may think he's not telling you the whole truth, but there you go. All right. Now, to his counterpart, and this is really actually actually, we're gonna kind of get into the why. We talked about, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, and the president has said that before he was president a million times, and now he's said it a million times after. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran can have a nuclear weapon. Again, I like to poke the bear. Well, Israel's got nuclear weapons because we gave them to them. So, again, it's in our best interest as the United States for Iran not to have a nuclear weapon because, well, they're religious fanatics, and you never know what a religious fanatic's going to do. So Netanyahu came out, and this is a famous picture of Netanyahu basically holding this picture of this bomb. Looks like something out of Looney Tunes. And basically saying that Iran is almost here. They're going to be here with their enrichment of uranium. And then they're going to boom in the final stage and be able to weaponize it. And they'll have a bomb. And it's 2 days away. And everybody's quoting this IAEA report, International Atomic Energy Agency report. They're 1 to 2 days away. Well, and they have this graph up with all these things. 1 to 2 days away, they're going to have 1 bomb. And in a month, they'll have 20 bombs. And I'm like, okay, well, let me look at the report. First off, IAEA board declares Iran in breach of non-proliferation obligations. Yes, the International Atomic Energy Agency did declare that Iran was in breach of their proliferation, their agreements. They are parties to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which if you're a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, it means that you will not try to acquire, make, sell, or basically put yourself in the market in any which way or form for nuclear materials meant for weapons at any point or in any way or manner, right? So this is the actual report. De-restricted June 12th, 2025. All right. It is a large report. Yes, I did read through it. Why? I'm a nerd, and therefore you don't have to. Now, what this is, though, so the IAEA has been doing inspections with Iran, going in there since the early 2000s, right? Since before the deal that Obama made with them, the deal that Trump got us out of, because it wasn't a very good deal. We were just giving them cash, and they were still making weapons on the sly. So the IAEA inspectors, they kind of knew where to go, and they could detect this stuff. It's not hard to detect radioactive material when you're going around the country. So there's a bunch of things. So they give you the introduction. I'm not going to go through all of this. Don't worry. I'm not going to bore you with all of it. The introduction is basically why, the how, basically what they're doing and why they're doing all the inspections. The safeguard agreements, again, they are parties to the party to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons since March 5th, 1970. Now, that's pre-Ayatollah, but it really doesn't matter if the government changes. It doesn't. You really can't say they are still signatories to that agreement. Okay, and basically goes through all the safeguards, what they're doing, the evaluation of safeguards, relevant information, background, all this stuff. So, and then they go through each section. The Lavasan Shian, and that's a location that they go to and say, this is where there's a laboratory, a physics laboratory, a place where they could enrich uranium. And basically say, we've been referred to by this. It's been intelligence on this. They go in there, they ask questions. Now, throughout this entire report, they'll tell you the government of Iran is not answering questions either forthright, outright, or they're refusing to answer certain questions by the inspectors. Okay? Make this as big as I can. There we go. So you got that throughout the entire report, it is that the government of Iran is being very, very duplicitous in their nature, in their dealings with this organization that's there to basically say, hey, you're not supposed to be doing this. So basically, here we go. Based on the evaluation, I'm going to read this part, kind of down in here. Based on the evaluation of all safeguards, relevant information, the agency concludes that approximately 10 kilograms of natural uranium metal, which had not been declared by Iran, was available to the Applied Physics Institute operating at Lavasan Shian in the period of 2002 to 2003. This uranium metal was used in the production of EDNS, basically explosive devices. The source of the material is assessed to be the conversion experiments carried out by the Abir Ibn Hayyan Multipurpose Laboratory, the JHL, between 1995 and 2000. So back then, they already had a lot of uranium, or enough. They were building up to the uranium. And it's very hard to process uranium. You need centrifuges. It takes a long, long time. If you've ever seen the movie Oppenheimer, you know that we were in a crash course of that, and it took us a couple of years just to get what we needed. So this is Iran. So they've been violating, basically saying they've been violating the Non-Proliferation Treaty since basically the early 2000s. And it goes on and on. Discrepancy of nuclear material balance. Basically, they're saying, we found evidence that there's more uranium that we can't find, but there's traces of it, there's evidence of it, there's radioactive signatures of it. But the uranium that they're looking for has basically been taken and hidden somewhere that they can't find. So they know that there's more uranium, there's more enriched uranium available within the nation of Iran, and that they cannot find it, and that the government of Iran is not actually letting them know anything that they need to know. On 9th March 2022, Iran informed the agency of its intention to transfer the uranium metal and scrap holdings from the JHL to the uranium conversion facility. Basically, they said they were giving up some of this stuff. They were going to convert it, all that stuff. And it was previously undeclared. That never actually happened. And again, this is just for one. What you're seeing is just the report on one location and the different things that happened there. The quantity, and this, here we go. The quantity of the nuclear material unaccounted for indicates that more uranium metal than the approximately 10 kilograms previously assessed by the agency to be available at the API, the Applied Physics Institute, which is operating at the Lavasanshian, was available to Iran. The current whereabouts of this nuclear material remains unknown to the agency. Therefore, the agency is not in a position to determine whether it has been consumed, mixed with other declared materials, or is still outside of safeguards. Basically, the IAEA, in this one, before we even get to the other locations, the IAEA is based, and now the IAEA has never been a friend of Israel. They've always been very, very soft on Iran. They've always been so, okay, we're gonna go along with it. Diplomacy. We want nothing but diplomacy. We want good relations, all that. Yes, we're going, right? They're not a bunch of strong, these are a bunch of scientists, right? These are a bunch of nuclear physicists. There's no military involved in this organization, so it's kind of easy for them to kind of get pushed around. They've been pushed around, but they got in there to get these inspections done. But even they are right now saying, back in 2022, we don't know where half this stuff is, all right? And that there is fissionable uranium that has been enriched, all right? And once you get to a certain level, it's there's a point of no return. Then they get to the Maravan location. I won't go through all this. But just to give you an idea, there's the Varman location, and they get all this through intelligence. They get it from the CIA. They do work. They do get intelligence from the CIA. They obviously get intelligence from Mossad and other agencies as well. Because believe me, there's not many Arab nations in the Middle East that want Iran to have a bomb. I can't really think of many. Maybe Lebanon. I doubt even they would want Iran to have a bomb at this point in time. Okay. Then there's Turkazabad. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, I apologize to anybody who is an Arab speaker. But again, 2018, 2019, you can see that it clearly goes through. It's a very, very detailed report. This isn't like, Colin Powell at the UN giving a bullshit report. There's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. This is from a UN agency that really tries to err on the side of caution. Okay. The agency assesses that here's some bullet points we'll kind of go through. The agency assesses that nuclear material and or contaminated equipment from Varman were at Turkazabad. So they're basically moving equipment around trying to fool the IAEA. This assessment is conclusively supported by the results of the environmental sample analysis from the two locations. It's hard to hide uranium. It leaves a trace. It leaves radioactivity. The agency assesses the material used between 1995 and 2000 at JHL for the production of uranium metal, much of which was subsequently dissolved at UCF in 2022, was also present at this location in the form of nuclear material and or of contaminated equipment. This support is conclusively supported by analysis of environmental samples taken to these locations. Basically, read between the lines, they're trying to move stuff around so they can't be caught. That's what the IAEA is basically saying. They're trying to fool us by moving stuff around. They did their best, but again, uranium has a shelf life of hundreds of years, okay? It's going to leave traces in the sand and the walls and whatever equipment it comes in contact or is nearby, or even your clothing. The agency has no assessment regarding the source of the low-enriched uranium particles, including some enriched up to 18% U-235. Now, that is not U-235 is something you don't really need to be. That's not weaponized, but they could say, but once it's at U-235, it makes it easier to get it to the U-232 that you need to get it to. All right. And again, the agency assesses that while some of the containers stored at Turkazabad were dismantled at the location, others may have been removed from the location intact in 2018 and moved to an unknown location. Basically, read between the lines, they're trying to hide the stuff from them. All right. And that's what Iran's been doing. It's basically their shell game. That's why they got so many places all over the place doing this work. All right. Cooperation between Iran and the agency. Basically, I've already kind of not going to really reiterate that, but it's just not been good. Not been good. They've not been answering questions. A little breakdown. Other examples of limited levels of cooperation. Here's other examples. Basically, this report is basically we're pissed and we're done with Iran. Okay? Because they knew once they put this report out, it's basically saying to Israel, you got to do what you got to do. All right? Even though that most of the scientists would probably say, try not to bomb the facilities, maybe take them over, bombing the facilities, you're spreading radiation all over the place, and that's probably not good. I could probably guarantee you it's not good. High-level meetings and consultations, blah, 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 blah. Overall assessment. The analysis, I love this first paragraph. The analysis of all available safeguards, relevant information, and lack of answers and clarifications provided by Iran to the agency's questions related to 3 locations has led the agency to conclude that these 3 locations and other possible related locations were part of an undeclared structured nuclear program carried out by Iran until the early 2000s, and some activities were undeclared nuclear material. So this is the report. I mean, I think if you're Israel or the President of the United States, this is all you need to read. And you have the CIA, you've got Mossad. This is a report that they felt comfortable putting out to the public. It was a restricted report for a few months at first until they said, okay, we kind of have to put our cards on the table and say this is what it is, and hopefully that pressures Iran to do the right thing. I think that was really what their hope and was. They didn't want to see a war, but anyways, they continue the diplomacy, all that stuff. They okay. Paragraph 85. This is the United Nations. Again, if they're putting this out and they're unrestricting this content, they're pretty much at their wits' end for this. Okay, all right. The rapid accumulation of highly enriched uranium is of serious concern and adds to the complexity of the issues described in this report, which the agency cannot ignore given the potential proliferation implications. Now, not only are they worried about Iran having a bomb, but who's Iran going to give this uranium to, or who's Iran going to build a bomb and sell it to, because that's pretty profitable, right? I mean, what terrorist organization are they going to say, hey, look, new toy. Here you go, Hamas. Here you go, Hezbollah. Here you go, whoever, right? The idea that they could start selling these things, making them and selling these things, is kind of scary, right? But that is the report as it goes through. So there's an annex, there's a bunch of joint statements that goes on. Again, if you want to read through it, it's again, it's very nerdy at times, but it really paints the whole story of the last 24 years. The last literally 24 years. And why is it important that we understand the last 24 years? Because I think it's really important to understand that I think President Trump is in a position where he's going to make a decision that's going to be very difficult. He doesn't want to be George W. Bush. He doesn't want to ruin his legacy by getting into a war that we shouldn't be in. I mean, we should not have been in the Iraq War. I firmly believe that. It really shouldn't have been there. So this report details the failure of every president before him, because you see, even during the Obama deal, the Obama deal that Democrats point to, say, we had a deal and then you got us out of it, Trump. Well, even during that deal, during those years, and during the Biden administration, when they were trying to re-implement that deal and they thought they had good faith, the Iranians were illegally enriching uranium and they were illegally moving things around, and they were violating their agreements to the Non-Proliferation Treaty and their agreements to UN resolutions. So it's really this document, for as little people outside of Washington, D.C. that will read it, is really important to understand the position that President Trump is now in. Is he going to do the same thing that presidents before him did, which is hope that Iran doesn't get a bomb? Or is he going to try a different tact? And I think he's trying to try a different track right now. He's letting Israel do the hard work right now. I hope to God, I pray to God that we don't get into a foreign war. But we might have to find some middle ground. But there's a problem with that, okay? We've got a problem with the middle ground. We're not sure he's going to be allowed to do it. Although I think he's just going to do whatever the hell he wants to do at this point in time. Right now, there's bipartisan lawmakers. I mean, you've got MAGA. I've never thought I'd see this in my life. You've got MAGA Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene and all that on one side, talking to people like Ilhan Omar on the other and saying we should get a resolution together that basically prohibits any type of U.S. involvement past what we've already done or part what we're doing with Iran, which basically ties the hands of the president. And in conjunction, basically in enacting the War Powers Act from 1973, which we're going to get into and why that is an important resolution and the history behind that resolution and why it exists, right? Because before that, it used to be the president just bombs whoever the hell he wants to bomb. Okay. A bipartisan group of House members on Tuesday introduced a War Powers resolution to prohibit U.S. involvement in Iran as it conflict with Israel testifies, signaling they may force a vote on the matter. And there's a thing where they can force a vote on the matter. They don't have to get the House Speaker to actually say, yeah, we'll bring their joint resolution to the floor. No, there's a way in which they can actually force the vote. So Representative Thomas Massey, Republican from Kentucky, who is one of the most outspoken libertarian-leaning Republicans advocating against U.S. military intervention abroad, posted on the social media site X on Monday that he would introduce such resolution on Tuesday, which he did. Quote, "This is not our war, but if it were, Congress must decide such matters according to our Constitution." Massey said, quote, "I'm introducing a bipartisan War Powers resolution tomorrow to prohibit our involvement. I invite all members of Congress to co-sponsor this resolution." Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, said he would co-lead the resolution with Massey and that the resolution would be privileged. Privilege means a designation that can allow the members to circumvent leadership to force a full House vote. Quote, "No war in Iran. It's time for every member to go on record. Are you with the neocons who led us into Iraq, or do you stand with the American people?" Khanna said in a post on X, quote, "I am proud to co-lead this bipartisan War Powers resolution with Rep. Massey that is privileged and must receive a vote." The text of the resolution says Congress hereby directs the president to terminate the use of the United States armed forces from hostilities against the Islamic Republic of Iran or any part of its government or military unless explicitly authorized by a declaration of war or specific authorization for use of military force against Iran. If this passes and the president actually goes forward with military action without a declaration of war, Congress, he can be impeached, and he probably should be at that point in time because he's violating the legislature. He's actually violating the Constitution at that point in time. So I hope they don't pass this because I hate to see any president's hands tied, but I understand why this exists. Because the President Trump doesn't like to have his hands tied. So anyways, the idea got swift support from some House Democrats. Signing on replied Representative Alexander Ocasio-Cortez. Doesn't get any more liberal and progressive than that, folks. Representative Don Bayer, Democrat of Virginia, said that he would also sign in. No other Republicans have co-sponsored the resolution yet because they aren't putting their names out yet until they vote on it. No other Republican is going to put their name on it. Well, there are some that have come out and said they might. President Trump has declined to rule out the use of power of the U.S. military to help Israel strike Iran, even as he pushes Iran to negotiate and strike a deal to ensure it would never obtain a nuclear weapon. The U.S. has helped Israel missile defense, but the Pentagon said Monday night that American forces are maintaining their defensive posture. All right. So, we saw what the president had to say. So what exactly is the War Powers Act? Okay. Little history lesson here, folks. And just so you know where the president can get himself in trouble, and I hope he doesn't. Here we go. The War Powers Resolution in 1973, and this is what the resolution that they're introducing is based on. All right. We all know Vietnam sucked. Okay. We all know President Nixon, one of the worst presidents in history, and probably is a war criminal. I say that as a Republican. He's a Republican president. The guy sucked, okay? The guy was a war criminal. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Why do I say that? Because he decided on his own to bomb Cambodia and Laos. And you're thinking, whoa, we were in war in Vietnam. Why are we bombing Cambodia and Laos? Because intelligence said that the North Vietnamese were using those countries as sort of routes to get around and supply routes. And they said, so the president said, you know what? I'm President Nixon and I can bomb whoever I want. I'm bombing them. And then Congress heard about it and said, stop what you're doing. And the president said, nope, I'm not, because I have the right. I'm the commander in chief. So they made the War Powers Act, basically stopping it, basically limiting the president's ability. So the War Powers Resolution in 1973, also known as the War Powers Act, is a congressional, let me see if I can make that a little bigger, is a congressional resolution designed to limit the U.S. president's ability to initiate or escalate military actions abroad. As part of our system of governmental checks and balances, the law aims to check the executive branch's power when it's committing U.S. military forces, to an armed conflict without the consent of the U.S. Congress, okay? Some people think, well, he's a commander-in-chief. Well, the Congress shouldn't. Well, listen, folks. This is the text of the original War Powers Act, all right? We bombed innocent women and children in Laos and Cambodia without Congress knowing about it. Congress did not know about it, which is why they asked you about the Gang of Eight. Are you going to inform at least the Gang of Eight? The Gang of Eight, the leadership in the Senate and the House, all right, and on the certain committees. We'll see about it. Maybe we don't have to. Maybe it won't be necessary. I'm like, no, you have to. You have to inform the Gang of Eight. All right. As much as I love President Trump and his gusto and his want to win and all that stuff, you still got to inform the Gang of Eight. You still have to follow it. So that's the War Powers Act. So again, Article 2 basically says the president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and the militia of the several states when called into actual service in the United States. He may require the blah, blah, blah. All right, that's all it says about the president being the commander-in-chief. Article 2 of the Constitution, which sets up the executive branch, the executive authority, the president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army. Aha, but we forget, there's Article 1, okay? Article 1, Section 8. Section 8, kind of an important section, all right? So, here we go. Basically gives Congress a lot of different rules, including immigration, all that stuff. The important one, to declare war. Pretty simple, 3 words, to declare war. Congress has the power to declare war. The president cannot declare war. He can't. Bombing a sovereign nation, whether you think it's a good idea or bad idea, is an act of war. It's plain and simple. It's an act of war. He at least needs to have the almost implicit authority. He needs to inform Congress first, right? If he doesn't inform Congress and the Gang of Eight, and they don't, the Gang of Eight signs off on it, they can get the rest of the Congress in line, okay? That's the importance of informing the Gang of Eight. If he doesn't inform the Gang of Eight, and there's a resolution already passed saying, hey, we have the power to declare war. You don't, President Trump, and he still does it and still throws a bunker buster down into a nuclear facility. Again, those are grounds for impeachment because those are real grounds for impeachment because you are committing an act of war against the wishes of Congress who actually have the power in the United States to declare war. All right. So these are very, very important guidelines, rules, separations of powers, checks and balances that are built into our government. And that is why when he kind of laughed off the whole, are you going to form the Gang of Eight? I said, oh God, no, please. All right. And that's why when I saw there's a joint resolution being prepared because there's a lot of people who don't want to see us involved militarily, I said, oh God. So he's going to be he's in one of the most difficult positions he could be in as president. One of the most difficult because he doesn't want it. We all know Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, but we might have our hands tied as a nation. We really might because the legislature does what the legislature wants to do. On the other hand, if the legislature doesn't pass that resolution and the War Powers Act is not enacted or implied or put onto the president or onto the executive, and the president says, oh, I guess I got free roam to do whatever I want, and he throws a bunker buster down there, where do we go from there? I mean, Colin Powell once famously said about Iraq to President Bush, you break it, you buy it. Man, we bought a lot, and I didn't like the price. Absolutely no boots on the ground. If there's one, we put our soldiers on alert. No more, no. It's part of the reason why I voted for Trump is I like the idea of no more foreign wars, no more forever wars, no more of this. And anybody out there on the television screaming at you, I saw Mark Levin, right? This nut job, right? On Fox News. He's like, you're either with the terrorists in Iran or you're with President Trump. No, it's not. This is not black and white, okay? There's a middle ground. I don't want that country. I don't want our country to go to war. I don't want Iran to have a bomb either. So let Israel do what Israel's going to do. Let's not put any of our people on the ground because that never goes well in the Middle East. It didn't go well in Afghanistan for 20 years. It didn't go well in Iraq, certainly. Listen, we just don't need that again. And President Trump does not need that in his presidency. It will derail everything he wants to do in his it will derail his entire foreign policy agenda. It will derail his entire domestic policy agenda. All right. If we get into a war. If we get into a war that, and people, it'll be only, oh, Iran, they're going to fold. They're at the very end. These people are fanatics. They're fanatics. They're zealots. Zealots don't fold. They may run and they may hide. They don't fold. They are masters of asymmetrical warfare. We saw that in Iraq. We saw that in Afghanistan. We saw how, John McCain, the famous, we need to surge all these troops. George W. Bush, we're going to surge. Why? Because these people are masters of asymmetrical warfare. What does that mean? It means hit and runs. It means car bombs. It means suicide bombs. It means all of that. It means everything that we had to deal with in Iraq that took the lives and of so many of our soldiers, and never mind their lives, but as many that came back maimed and don't have a real life to live, that don't have much to look forward to right now. This is what we have to look forward to. So we need to be smart about this. So if the president does use military action, you want to drop the bunker busters? Fine, drop the bunker busters, but be prepared that you're going to have to level Iran afterwards with bombs. Don't follow up with troops. Just friggin', you're going to have to level it. Regime change. Anybody who's talking about regime change, shut up. We don't need regime change. All right. Nation building doesn't work. Do we not remember the presidency of George W. Bush? It's the same idea. We're going to go in there. We're going to remove Saddam and we're going to install they're going to want democracy. I heard Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham saying that on the TV today. The Iranian people are going to be they're going to love to have their democracy. Okay. How do you know? You said that about Iraq. They were going to love to have their democracy. No, we ended up there for I don't know how many years. It's ridiculous, folks. And, maybe I'm a little bit more passionate about it now than I was maybe a few years ago. When the Iraq war was going on, I was like, oh, this sucks. We should end it, blah, blah, blah. I'm a little more passionate about it now because, I don't know, I'm older and I just don't want to see any more young people have to give their lives for something that really is not in the national interest. Yes, Iran not having a nuclear weapon is not in the national interest. Fine. Give the bunker busters and give the bunker busters to Israel and say, go, do it. All right. However, but putting us on the ground, putting us in the middle of this war, it's just not something I want to see done. The MAGA movement will be done. I mean, honestly, if the Democrats are sitting and going, we cannot get involved in this war and whatnot, but secretly in the back of their head, they know that if he goes and he commits, the MAGA movement's over. Because the MAGA movement will then become this war. And President Trump said today, I created America First, so I can tell you what America First means. Well, no, once you put an idea out there into the zeitgeist and people have their own thoughts and patterns, America First means not getting into foreign wars and they start making their own decisions, you kind of lose control of that, right? It becomes its own organic thing, kind of growing. And it's grown to this idea that, no, we are not going to do what previous Republican presidents did, what they call the neocons, right? The neoconservatives. But he says, I'm America First. I decide what's America First. I think that's the wrong way to play it. But again, he's the president. He can play it however he wants. But if we put boots on the ground in Iran, good luck. That's the end of his agenda, both foreign and domestic. Because that's all it's going to be. 24/7, the war. What's going on in the war? Tariffs? Who cares about tariffs? We're not going to talk about tariffs. We're not going to pass no tax bill. Forget about the tax bill. Forget about everything else. Forget about ICE raids. Forget about all that, right? You're going to be called the National Guard. You're going to need the National Guard. What? To go supplement the troops. So there's a lot. What we're basically on war watch, whether we're going to do it or not. I think he's going to drop some bunker busters. Personally, I think he's going to try to get away with it. I think what he's going to try to do is thread the needle, drop some bunker busters, and go, okay, we're out. I don't know how that works. Because then we're in it. Because then we've it's an act of war against Iran. Someone's gonna hit us back, right? And we're gonna hit them back. It escalates, and that's how it goes. So I don't want to see this presidency derailed in that manner. I certainly don't want to see another war. So that is the War Powers Act. That is the big deal going on right now. again, if you want to read the War Powers Act, the original 1973 War Powers Act, and really get an idea of what it is. Now, first of all, this joint resolution that was passed in 1973 was not a partisan bill. The entire Congress was pissed, right? They were all pissed. They passed it. Nixon vetoed it. They overrode his veto. Easily overrode his veto. All right? And that was basically the beginning and the end of him. But if you want to read it, you just go to congress.gov. It's HJ Resolution 542, a joint resolution concerning the war powers of Congress and the president. And again, it will probably be very similar to the one that they are writing right now. So the Constitution divides war powers between Congress and the president. Yes. Only Congress can declare war and appropriate military funding. Yet the president, once they declare war, now the president's in charge of executing that war, right? As long as we continue to fund it, basically. That's what it does. Some people say it's unconstitutional. Some people say that and again, it can be considered unconstitutional by some who read it and say it's a violation of Article 2. I don't personally see it that way, and neither has the Supreme Court on multiple occasions. But again, this is where we're at as a country right now. This is the inflection point. It literally is an inflection point in our history in the 21st century, and it'll have repercussions to come depending if we make the right move or make the wrong move. We make the wrong move, all right, we'll see what happens. So I hope President Trump makes the right move. I have faith that he will eventually get us out of this. But it's hard to read him because he doesn't like to be read, right? So he's going to put out, it's funny, it's like he puts out these fake signals sometimes, right? It's like he's misdirecting, but we'll see. So we're on war watch, people. We're on war watch. I had a lot of coffee. Today. I was going to cover Senator Padilla today, but I think we've had our fill of politics today in war, and we've had a lot from the president. We had the IAEA. Again, also, if you want to see this report, if you just type in IAEA report on Iran, it's the first thing that'll come up. And again, it was de-restricted a few days ago. But yeah, there you go. But with that, woo! History can be tiring. Research can be tiring, but I love it. I do love it. I do love doing this. I do love bringing this stuff to you guys, explaining this stuff to you. It's I was a certified teacher in a past life. I loved teaching. I love teaching. So this is sort of like an extension of teaching. So I hope you're enjoying the material. Let me know what you think of whether or not the president has the power to act unilaterally or not, whether you think he's covered under the Constitution, or whether you think he needs to abide by the War Powers Act. And do you think Congress needs to check him? And do you think if Congress checks him and he still acts on his own, it's an impeachable offense? That I will say, if he violates a law of Congress, then it's an impeachable offense. But I will say that. Personally, that'll be my opinion on that matter. But with that, let's hope and pray that he makes the right decision. It's nighttime now. I'm sure he's still awake. Our president doesn't sleep. He looks like he hasn't slept. I'm sure he's in the Situation Room right now. I'm sure he's getting briefings right now. I'm sure he's watching the chaos unfold in Tehran and in Tel Aviv and other places in Israel right now, and he's weighing these options. And we could wake up tomorrow morning and find out that we're in the middle of it. So let's pray that God gives him the wisdom to do the right thing, make the right decision for the country, for the people of both Iran and Israel, because in both countries, whether you're an Arab like I am, or a Jew, or an American, we're watching people die that don't deserve to die right now. So that's the biggest picture. And I think that's the biggest thing that gives me comfort is when the president says, I put out the evacuation order because I don't want to see people hurt. I don't want to see people hurt. That's compassion, folks. That's compassion. So he knows the reality of the situation in the world. Still, he's trying to have compassion. But with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know we're a little bit later than usual. I'm going to say salud and ahuevo from south of the border. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you like and subscribe if you did. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with better news and happier news. But with that, I'm out of here. I'm still your reluctant gringo. Let's go.